Usually, I paint with imprimatur, but today I will show you how to do underpainting correctly. Please note that for the underpainting, I use more subdued and warm colors such as yellow ochre, red ochre, chromium oxide, and cobalt blue. Let's make the drawing with natural charcoal, which I personally really enjoy the sound of. Without applying too much pressure, we easily and casually create some outlines of a future painting. As a beginner in painting, it's very important for you to avoid perfectionism. The main thing is to enjoy the process. With each subsequent stage, we will refine the details. By the way, such charcoal drawing can be easily wiped off with a napkin to remove excess charcoal from the canvas. We only need the general outlines. Now we move on to the underpainting. This is the very bottom layer of paint, which has various tasks, and one of the most important is to give us an idea of where we will need to draw our objects on our future painting, a method called painting from the spot in the sense that the outlines of the spots will still be refined. Its difference from grisaille or imprimatura is that underpainting also includes an approximate color combination. I would advise beginners to choose more warm and subdued colors for underpainting, or you could also mix them using your usual set of paints. We also need to try to apply the paint in a thin layer so that there are no small white spots left. For this, I use a solvent, which you will find a wide selection of in art stores. I really love the sound of a brush rustling against the canvas. Even with my eyes closed, I can distinguish the sound of high-quality canvas from low-quality canvas. I habitually apply strokes according to the direction of the object's movement, in this case, the waves. We can perform the clouds in the same color, try not to leave too harsh outlines, and also avoid the pastosity of the strokes at this stage. The main principle of underpainting could be expressed by the word approximation. This is how we easily and casually apply the paint with light movements, and our painting already acquires some charm, and this is just the beginning of the video. By the way, for the shadow part of the boat, I started taking natural umber. We connect all the paint spots so that there are no white areas left on the painting. I like such a soft shadow. Let's take more umber and put it on the shadow part of our boat. Now for the underpainting, I'm using red ochre, but any earthy red color would also work, English or Venetian red, burnt sienna, and so on. This color will go great with cadmium red, which I plan to use to paint the boat. Using a cotton swab, I wipe away the places where I plan to add a few sailboats in the distance. Now the painting needs to be left to dry for a day, so while you wait, give yourself the opportunity to rest and enjoy something you don't do every day. Seriously, this is your homework, my dear beloved viewers. Make sure you're getting notifications about new videos. Now we need ultramarine, 2 different shades. A darker shade will be in the upper part of the sky, and a lighter one in the lower. This is how we create the sky with short horizontal strokes. I'll answer the question of why exactly horizontal. Tell me, does the sky feel more vertical or horizontal? Most likely horizontal, as it stretches wide to the right and left, that is, in 2 directions, and vertically only upwards, that is, in 1 direction. This is a funny explanation, but at least you won't forget it. Of course, every rule has its exceptions. Continue applying strokes of different tones and colors until you are satisfied with the result. I understand this explanation might seem a bit vague. When I first started painting, I didn't like such formulations either, and I went to study first in one studio, then for 4 years at an art academy, worked in a workshop and a art school, and now I work as a painting restorer in Barcelona. I now understand exactly what I needed at the very beginning of my path, even just to draw well for my own pleasure as a form of art therapy. And here's what I did. I compiled 14 videos covering all the main topics, rules, and life hacks that I learned and that are worth knowing for both beginners and enthusiasts with some experience. The list of topics is available on the website. You can at least just read the topics and check yourself. Without any fluff or talking heads, just practical universal rules and tips to take your painting to the next level. The link is in the first comment. For the mountains, we mixed a slightly warmer shade of blue by adding ochre. By adding more shade options into the painting, we create more complex gradients, making our artwork more interesting and dynamic. We'll also show the illuminated parts of the mountains with such light strokes, creating an interesting rhythm and adding depth to our landscape. I also decided to add a bit of emerald to the sky, and note that this color looks more like clear blue rather than green due to its cool tone. We will paint the distant part of the sea using the technique you're already familiar with, in one continuous line. It's not necessary to paint small details like distant sailboats. They're easier to draw into the layer of paint later. Now let's prepare the next mix of paint. There's no need to rush, so in such cases, you can move your hands slowly and confidently. Notice how the sea warms up in color as it approaches us, although overall, all colors are more saturated than the underpainting. It may seem like our strokes have completely covered the previous layer, but upon closer inspection, you'll see that's not the case, and the underpainting creates additional richness in shades. Notice how I create a certain spottiness with my strokes, a simple way to convey the sea waves shimmering in different shades from deep blue to turquoise green. Layering such strokes with an empty brush, as it were, stitches together two different colored parts and turns them into a smooth, yet dynamic gradient. Let's repeat this technique with the water closer to the shore. Here the water may appear greener still, as the thickness of the water is less and the bottom becomes visible, imparting its hue to the overall perception of the water. In general, this is a simple principle. Where the water is thicker, it is darker and closer to blue. Where the water is thinner, it is closer to the color of the bottom. Notice how the strokes lay on the dry first layer, but this technique is also applicable to on wet technique, so you can boldly try it, although you will need to get a little used to it and learn how to hold the brush correctly, hint, not the same way you hold a pen for writing. When I record videos for you, I try to simplify the process and make it as understandable as possible. The tripod holding the camera, which I actually broke, gets in the way, so I can't see on the screen exactly what I'm capturing in the frame. By the way, here's a riddle for you. What color is on the palette? Brown, beige, gray? Yes and no. On the painting itself, this color looks like gray-blue. How do you like the influence of the environment on the color scheme? This was a short video from the process of painting restoration. Now let's return to our seascape. We need to sketch the foam on our wave drafts so that there is enough material on the canvas for further work with it. There's no need to skimp on paint at this stage, so we can lay down some thick strokes. Let's refine the wave lines so they don't look as if they've quarreled with Wolverine. This can be done with a tone that is 1 unit darker than the surrounding waters. It's a simple technique for adding expressiveness. At this moment, I fell into some kind of trance and got carried away with applying strokes, back and forth, right and left. In short, I had a good time, although later I will return to the waves and correct them a bit. In such painting, the main thing is to relax, not rush, and enjoy the process. You should be comfortable, and ideally, there should be a cup of tea or coffee nearby. Of course, if there's also the presence of the sea or ocean itself, that would be even better. A painting can be written forever. Let's add a couple of waves that are just rolling up to the shore, with the green we're already familiar with, but not the lightest. With such soft horizontal movements, we pull the brush, barely touching the already applied paint. Note that I also make these waves at a slight angle, so we get a transition from the strict horizontal line of the sea to the slope with which the nearest wave rolls onto the shore. It's time to do something with the shore. Funny thing is, the sand isn't really that yellow, but for the brightness of the impressions, I wanted to make it yellower. The underpainting helps us again. Note that in the shadow of the boat, my strokes are not as textured as on the illuminated part. Apply strokes on top of other strokes, so you create a unique and interesting texture directly on the canvas itself. See, it's very easy, so whether you're 12 or 112, you can do it too. I believe in that. Let's scatter a few strokes of a different shade, darker and closer to blue. After all, this is wet sand. And what about green clouds? I know, they don't exist, but why should we be so boring, and why not add this green, especially since we already have a lot of it in the painting, and this shade will be friendly with the paints we've already applied. This is how we easily and casually create the shadowy parts of all the clouds. Now with this beige with a pinkish tint, we work with the light parts of the clouds. Don't take what was drawn as the final stage of the painting. After all, we have the right to change the color in the process of a creative impulse. That's what creativity is all about. Such a rich pastosity will give the clouds materiality and they will look good. Sometimes I just let my hand lead the line independently, and here's what happens. Quite organically. We shouldn't linger on one area for too long so as not to overdo it and leave room for accidental beauty. Now we've reached the little boat. The boat is a fairly material object, so if you get a pasty stroke, don't wipe off the excess, just leave it as is. Here's a very convenient moment. The stroke from the brush is very similar in shape to a plank, so it will be easy for us to convey the look of an old boat. The main thing is to draw a calm, even line, but if you can't, it's not a big deal. Maybe the boat has been lying in the sun for a long time and some of its planks may not be straight. The overall impression is what matters to the viewer. The underpainting works here too, as we don't end up with an overly red boat that would look unnatural. The lower layer of paint shows through the new layer and creates the necessary mood. You can also mix red with ochre on the palette. Note that on the inner wall of the boat there is a gradient in color from brownish red to red, which will give a sense of the correct shape. A couple more details and now we are mixing the color for the distant boats. It is not white. Now it's time for the distant boats, and here's how we'll do them. Just a few brush prints, just in the right direction, and our brain will independently complete the image. This will add a sense of space to the painting. That's what painting is all about. And here's a painting tool that's even better than a brush. It's always with you and allows you to do this, to make the waves seem more chaotic and natural. Check out my other videos.